Good morning and happy Sunday to you. This is Max Velocity with our first ever early morning forecast. In today's forecast, we're primarily going to be focusing on when we could see our first hurricane of the season. I'm going to kind of give you my own insight into what we can expect and why the first hurricane of the season could be coming as early as the end of this month. We'll also give you some insight onto what happened in the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the system that is currently developing in the Eastern Atlantic Ocean. Let's hop right into it. As you may have heard, potential Tropical Cyclone 4 did make landfall in Mexico. It did not become our fourth named storm though, and that's because it never organized itself into a tropical storm or even a tropical depression. So very good news overall for that system, but it is unfortunately bringing some heavy rainfall this morning to areas in Mexico and extreme southern Texas. Some isolated flash flooding may occur, but beyond that, it did not become organized. We are still on a below average hurricane season so far. Now, the National Hurricane Center does think we're going to still have an above average hurricane season, but as of right now, we do have something to maybe be concerned about, maybe in the long term, talking about maybe 10 to 15 days out, and that's all the way back out to the east in the Eastern Atlantic. We do have a little system right now that is currently developing just off the coast of Africa. It only has a 20% chance of developing over the next 5 days, but this may become maybe a brief tropical depression or storm. As of right now, I'm not forecasting too much beyond with this, but there may be another tropical wave just after this one that could potentially pose more threats than just being a low-end tropical depression or storm. More on that here in just a moment. Let's begin though with that little area of development that we had. Obviously, it's potential Tropical Cyclone 4 that has made landfall. You can clearly see here on the infrared imagery, there's just hardly any thunderstorm activity. It was not organized when it made landfall, and really at this point, it's just some showers and storms. You can see a couple of showers and storms firing up there just off the coastline of Mexico as well as Texas. Beyond that though, the circulations remain pretty minimal. We just have not seen any organized system here that made landfall, so good news there. Again, Danielle is still on the table for our next system over the next several days, so we'll be watching that. Obviously, we are still with only 3 named storms on the season so far. All right, let's hop into the tropics. As I mentioned before, we do have a little area of development that is just off to the west of Africa. Here it is. That is your little low pressure system, and this is an area to watch maybe for something weak over the next maybe few days. This is a look over the next few days going to Monday and Tuesday. You can kind of see the European model just doesn't really favor this system a whole lot. That would mainly be due to the shear and as well as just the overall conditions with where this storm is kind of heading. It's not heading in the most favorable atmosphere or environment for this to develop, but something behind it going into maybe later this week, could it pose a more of a threat to potentially really anywhere in the Lesser Antilles or potentially into the United States. But obviously there's a lot in between now and then, but only about 140 hours out on the computer models. We are seeing a little development, and this has been very consistent so far with those computer models, that this could very well develop as it tracks off to the west. As of right now, you can see going into the weekend and early next week, it starts to kind of strengthen into maybe a tropical storm or maybe even a low-end hurricane heading into the following week. Obviously, there is a lot of time in between now and then, but this has been very consistent with the European model, but which, by the way, has been very accurate so far this year. So this will definitely be a system to watch very closely. You can kind of see by the European model, it kind of tracks off to the northwest. Again, there's just so much uncertainty beyond really about 7 days out or so, but we do have a good idea that this may become our first hurricane of the season. But as I mentioned before, there is still a lot of time in between now and then, so things can change as we get closer. And let's real quickly hop into the GFS model. As of right now, it is currently indicating that that little one area of development may reach the Lesser Antilles. As of right now, it seems like it's going to be fighting some fairly strong upper level winds and as well as some strong shear along with that. Eventually, the second system behind it, the one I was mentioning that may become maybe a hurricane, starts to move off to the west. It kind of just goes to the north of the Lesser Antilles. From there, there is a lot of uncertainty. Will it strengthen? Will it weaken due to some shear? A lot of things are still to be determined, but it will definitely be a system to watch, but not to be too concerned about as of right now. To conclude this forecast, what's my personal opinion on when we could see our first hurricane of the season? Well, as I mentioned before, it may happen as early as the end of this month, but I think realistically we may see it as early as maybe early next month or potentially near the peak of hurricane season on September 10th of 2022. We'll be watching everything very closely for you. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the like button if you haven't already as well. This forecast is brought to you by Platinum Contracting and All Dents Repair.